Hello, guys, and welcome back to domestic football, and more importantly, the Russian Football News Predictions League. Week 7, first international break has gone. A very successful one, of course, for Russia. Beating Turkey 2-1 away in the UEFA Nations League. Dzyuba scoring again, as captain this time, no less, and the most capped player in the squad for that game. Akinfeev, of course, is out. Well, not out, he was in Germany having routine medical examination. So Dzyuba stepped in and he stepped up to the plate. That's a really important win. Now, for any of you who's not up to speed on the UEFA Nations League, it's actually really simple. Basically, Russia have a group of 3 teams, Sweden and Turkey. Whoever wins that mini group then goes through to a 4-team playoff of similarly ranked teams in the UEFA coefficients internationally. And the winner of that playoff is in Euro 2020. It's a route into Europe. Now, Russia are not guaranteed through regular qualification groups, which will happen as usual, but that is a massive result away to Turkey. They've now got the next 2 fixtures are both at home, so they could be in a very comfortable position to qualify for Euro 2020, which, don't forget, is a tournament across, I think it's 11 or 12 host countries, one of which is Russia itself. St. Petersburg will have 3 games, but no automatic place. Anyhow, like I say, on to domestic football. Now, last game week, I should say, we saw a big clash at the top of the table. Zenit St. Petersburg against Spartak Moscow. 0-0 it finished. Now, we'll come to those games in a moment involving those teams. So that was probably the biggest fixture, which of course only suits Zenit because they don't lose any advantage. Lokomotiv against Dynamo Moscow, another Moscow derby here. Of course, we have 4 teams, so there are going to be regular Moscow derbies to come across. Lokomotiv, well, they came up against Krasnodar. Smolov's returned to Krasnodar since leaving. They had 1-2 on the bounce, but they came up short thanks to Magomed Shapi Suleimanov, his, I believe, 3rd senior goal for Krasnodar. Very promising times for him personally. And that leaves Lokomotiv at the moment. They are now 8 points behind Zenit already. Now, I know it's only 6 games in, but it is 6 games in. So, unfortunately, it's not looking all rosy for them. Only 4 goals scored after 6 games. Dynamo Moscow, however, last weekend, let's just check what was their result again. 2-0 at home to Orenburg, which I correctly called. I won't mind reminding you. They have a lot of problems, though. Their problems off the pitch. There's arguments between Dmitry Khokhilov and Roman Shirokov. Check out Vitaly Leonov's brilliant 2-part feature into the ins and outs of that. Dynamo are a mess, and who owns them, who's running them, who's making the decisions, the stadium, honestly, it's all over the place. I'm going to go for a win in this one for Lokomotiv. I don't think it's going to be spectacular. They've not been scoring goals like I mentioned, so I'm only going to go for 1-0. But there we go, 1-0 in the opening fixture. That is on Friday night. Okay, coming up, second game. Rubin Kazan at home to Yenisei. Now, Rubin are another side that have not really spread their wings yet. They've not been too bad. They've not been too great. Sardar Azmoun scored twice in the opening weekend, hasn't scored since. They've only conceded 6, but they've only scored 6 as well. They've only won 1, they've only lost 1. It's a very symmetrical season for them so far. However, they're at home. And Yenisei Krasnoyarsk, although they've picked up a good bit of form while they've been playing in Tyumen, they're now back in Krasnoyarsk, or will be, I should say. Their away form has not been great. So, very simply, I'm going to go for a Rubin win. And for similar reasons, and not adventurous, I'm going for 1-0 simply because Rubin are not scoring for fun, and Yenisei, whilst they are struggling away from home, I don't believe they are going to suddenly start scoring a bucket load or even at all on the road. Okay, moving on to Ufa at home to CSKA Moscow. Now, unfortunately, guys, as you, of course, will be well aware by now, the dream is over for UFA. It was a very valiant Europa League qualification campaign for them, but they came up short against Rangers in the playoff round, the final playoff round before the group stage. Rangers down to 9 men in that second leg in Russia, but UFA just couldn't get through. Rangers, if truth be told, are a better side, but not by a lot, and that was the promising side of it. What it means is, however, UFA are now having to focus on their league campaign, and they are struggling badly. They've conceded 8. They only scored 4 all season, one of the lowest tallies in the league. They are level on points with Ural, who are in the automatic relegation zone. And away from home, UFA have lost both their away games and conceded 5, scored only once. So, not looking great for them. CSKA, on the other hand, well, they're looking more and more competent after their summer upheaval than, week on week. They really are. They have a lot of injury problems, admittedly. Kuchayev, Viktor Vasinov still out with cruciate ligament injuries. Bištović is out for a month with ankle ligament trouble. Shenikov, Alan Zagoyev. Hordor Magnusson is supposedly fit, but even he had to go off injured in the last game. A lot of injury worries, but they have a good young squad. They've got Ilzak Akhmatov to come into the side. Perhaps he will feature more. Young Japanese striker's name has slightly slipped my mind off the top of my head, but he scored every other goal, every other game in the Japanese league. So, look, they have options. And I actually do think that Viktor Goncharenko is going to beat his old side away from home here. I think UFA just it's really hit them hard how difficult it has been to cope with European and domestic football. In the long run, their form will pick up. They are a good side and they won't have that distraction. But I do think CSKA are going to win this weekend. Score, quite hard to say. For some reason, I actually think they're going to score. I think they might score twice. So I'm going to go for 2-1 to CSKA. Slightly ambitious, 2 goals away from home and against UFA, who are traditionally a very defensive side. I just think the momentum is with them. Okay, moving on to Arsenal Tula at home to Krylia Sovietov. Both sides having a relatively inconsistent, shall we say, start to the season. Krylia are getting good crowds at home, but of course on the road is a different matter. They've only conceded once in their 2 away games, which is a positive for them, but only 2 goals scored in 6 games. That is the joint lowest goals scored tally in the entire league. Now, when it comes to Arsenal Tula, they're not clicking under Oleg Kononov so far. Only 1 win so far, 6 goals conceded. At home, 1-1, drawn 1, lost 1. A bit hard to really pick a great deal of form out of that. So for me, Krylia, I think they will have enough to earn a draw here. I don't think it's going to be exciting. I'm just going to go for 0-0, to be honest with you. Okay, moving on to Orenburg at home to Zenit St. Petersburg, the Gazprom derby, you might say. Now, officially, Orenburg are no longer funded by Gazprom, but through subsidiaries of subsidiaries, you can bet your bottom dollar that they are, and that being a petrol dollar as well. Anyhow, in terms of form, Orenburg, well, I did predict last time round, that the Orenburg bubble would slightly burst, and I was right. It doesn't mean I'm going to be right about many things, but at least I did call that. Now, I don't think they're going to be in a huge amount of trouble over the course of the season, but the early form that they showed, 3 wins in the first 4, I really don't think they're going to be in European contention, but I think they'll probably be safe with mid-table. This game, well, Zenit are Zenit. They've been on flying form. Zuba's 7 goals in 8 games for Zenit in all competitions. Yes, they do have Kristin Nabora, Emmanuel Mamana out with injury, Yuri Zhirkov, Alex Shatov, but they do, of course, have Claudio Marchisio. What a signing that is. Whether he will play the full 90 minutes or even play at all, they may not feel the need to risk him in first game away from home. But either way, it's a huge boost. And Zenit are just absolutely flying. Just a bit of team news signing for Orenburg. Ricardo Alves, former Portuguese under-20 international. Don't know a lot about him, but that sounds like an interesting signing. Again, match fitness could be an issue. We don't know. I'm going to go for a Zenit win. Not particularly difficult one to call that for me. Some people may still feel there's an overhang of good form from Orenburg that might frustrate Zenit. Personally, I don't see it. So, I am going to go for a Zenit win, and I think they will score more than once. I'm going to go for an efficient 2-0 win for Sergei Semak's men. Okay, and that brings us on to Anzhi against Krasnodar. Bit of a, I wouldn't quite call it southern derby, but at least it is a southern journey of sorts, which is not too far to travel for Krasnodar. They had a very good win, like I say, against Lokomotiv. Yes, they left it very late. It was at home. But like I say, Suleimanov scoring is a good sign for them. Ivan Ignatiev is going to have to step up. And I think in the medium to long term he will. Wherever he scores, it's not so crucial at this early stage for me. He needs to be given games because it's a huge mantle to fill, to take over the lead striking role from Fyodor Smolov. Ari is still suspended, of course, violent conduct, third game of his 3-match suspension. And of course, you'd expect him to come back into the side. But for now, Ignatiev almost certainly will start. Away to Anzhi. Well, Anzhi, as usual, you can never really trust them. They're bottom of the table. They've lost more games than anybody else. They've conceded the second most number of goals. In their defence, they have played 5 of their 6 games so far away from home. So they've saved up some home games. It's good. But in that one home game, they did concede 3 goals. So not really many signs of encouragement for Anzhi there for me. So I'm going to go for a Krasnodar win. I'm only going to go for 1-0 because Krasnodar are in their 4th place at the moment. They've scored 7 goals in 6 games. It's not bad. But I just feel 1-0 is enough. I don't think they will need to push particularly hard to get a win. Moving on, Spartak at home to Akhmat Grozny. Spartak, of course, are without Quincy Promes after his move. But the big news is John Terry. Now, it's not entirely certain at this point, at the time of recording, where John Terry is. He did get his Russian visa yesterday, but there is talk that he is not entirely happy with the financial terms. Nobody's entirely sure what is going on, to be 100%, but there are doubts coming over his move. So I think it's very unlikely that he will be available for this game. Even if he is available, question marks over his involvement anyway. Buketi and Jikia are fit, so they are the only 2 fit senior centre-backs. That's why Terry was being brought in the first place, but whether Terry will play, I very much doubt it for this weekend. The news around it has been swamping Russian football news, as you will have known. As for Akhmat, well, last weekend, like I mentioned, Spartak, the last game week, Spartak, very creditable 0-0 draw away to Zenit, Spartak fielding 3 of their academy products, Maximov in goal, Raskazov fullback, and I always forget the young fellow who played on the left wing, I forget his name, another 19, 20-year-old. So, faith in youth. Is working out so far. Spartak are not scoring a lot. Only scored 5 goals in 6 games, but they're still second in the table, and that's because of their excellent defence. Only 1 goal conceded so far this season. Best defence in the league, along with Zenit. Akhmat, well, they're just Akhmat, aren't they? They're mid-table. They're a mid-table team, and I don't see them really moving away from that. Away from home, they have lost all 3 games, conceded 6 goals. So that is how I see this game going. I'm just going to go for 1-0. A lot of 1-0s for me this week. I know it's not adventurous. I'm being a bit conservative. Perhaps Spartak could score more than that. But anyhow. And finally, we have Ural at home to Rostov. Normally, yours truly would be there reporting on the game. Unfortunately, I have a slightly different schedule at the moment, which involves picking my daughter up from school at 11 in the morning and looking after all day. So unfortunately, I won't be able to do midweek games for Ural this season, which means I still won't have been back in Yekaterinburg. I'm sorry about that, guys. And Rostov would be a great game to go to because Rostov are on flying form. Only lost once this season. Only 2 goals conceded. Only Zenit and Spartak, the top 2, have conceded fewer. On the road, 2 1-0 wins, and very good ones as well. Away to CSKA, I believe, was one of them. Ural, like I mentioned, are in the relegation zone. They're struggling. Pavel Pogrebnyak is still going to be a few weeks off match fitness, and even when he is he really still the man to answer the goal-scoring questions? Possibly, but we don't know. Rostov have signed yet another Icelandic international, Vidar Kjartansson. You'd have to imagine Rostov are the favourites. I just I don't know if it's just my bias coming out yet again. I think Ural will be able to hold out for a draw here. A draw would be great for Rostov away from home. There's no pressure on them anymore. They've made that start. So I'm going for 1-1 Ural Rostov. Best of luck, guys. Get your predictions in as usual, and I will join you next week. Bye-bye.